Well, kia ora, and welcome to a mini hoon here on the Kaka. And it's great to have back Blake Forbes and Nick Ruane, who have been following the total mobility story quite closely. Firstly, Blake, can you tell us about the petition that you've organised and where we are with total mobility?
Sure. So as we go on air, this is at approximately around 1,350 signatures. As we go to air, it's been going for about 3 days. So pretty good for 3 days. Excellent, actually. And this is along the same lines, which I'll get into a bit later, as what we did with Victoria Coleman. But we'll get there in a few minutes, I guess.
Mm.
But in terms of the total mobility, yes, Bernard has been a hard road. We had the new changes come into force, well, a portion of them at the beginning of this month. So it's really been a trying time for the community with everything else that's going on as well.
Mm. So, Blake, the subsidy for total mobility has been dropped from 75% to 65% from July the 1st. And what sort of we seem to have lost Blake there. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but I'll ask you, Nick, if that's all right.
Sure.
What sort of effect has the cut in the subsidy had since July the 1st on the community, and what sort of reaction has there been?
I mean, essentially, it just makes our taxi rides more expensive. I mean, if you look at the top line number dropping from 75 to 65, in most people's minds that doesn't seem like a lot. But when I looked at the Ministry of Transport modelling, they looked at it at an example from Otago, which was an example that they used in their own modelling of a fare for a $50 ride, which is a relatively modest ride. Some rides can go more than $100, even up to $200. So 50 is relatively relatively within the normal range. And what they showed was that the rider themselves would, under the 75% subsidy, would pay $12.50. Now under the 65, they're going to pay $20.75. So that's a really significant jump that people are going to be paying, and they start to pay that from July the 1st. So that's the real time example of what people are going to start to pay in terms of the increase, and that's a real example.
And for those who are not familiar with this story, what sort of trips are people taking, or were they taking with the 75% subsidy, and what type of trips may not be taken now that the subsidies dropped to 65%?
I mean, the main majority of trips that people are taking are trips to medical appointments, trips to get their weekly shopping, trips to visit friends, family, whānau. So people are using it to get access to the wider community, to do this, to do the sort of things that everyday New Zealanders just take for granted, and because of the lack of accessibility of the public transport system for members of our disability community, that's why people use total mobility, because our taxi system is more accessible because of the accessible vehicles that are part of total mobility. So that's why people are using it, but this just makes it more expensive.
Yeah, because many people were using it to go to hospital appointments, to therapy, physical therapy, and other appointments. Apart from that, there must be people going to jobs or for social occasions. Do we have a sense of from the government, because the government did consider the requests or the comments from the community, what sort of feedback did you get from ministers and those in government when you argued against the cut in the subsidy?
It was actually really interesting, the feedback that we got, because both Blake and I met with Chris Bishop and asked the direct question, what type of analysis are you doing around the cut or the decision to reduce the subsidy? And initially at the meeting, we asked about something called a social impact analysis, which is a broader analysis around how this decision will impact members of the community. And at that meeting, there was a admission that hadn't been done, which was a little bit surprising. But one of the things I found just most recently is that there wasn't even a cost-benefit analysis done either. So this is the sort of decision that was just arrived at with very little rigor and very little analysis. There was just a decision made to reduce to 65% because they figured that there could be a saving achieved with very little of the usual type of analysis that government agencies go through. And yeah, really quite disappointing, actually.
Blake, great to have you back in. Thank you very much for jumping back on. Can you tell us about what sort of response you've had to the petition, and how widely known do you think this cut in the subsidy is?
So as I was saying before, I got cut off, and hopefully not again. We'll see. The petition had over 1,350 as we go to air, and along the same lines as what we did with Victoria Coleman, and this this cut has affected everybody. As we spoke about before, it was in our previous chat, it was going to, and that has obviously come to pass.
And what sort of response have you had from the opposition politicians to this? Do you have a sense that it could be reversed if there's a change of government?
So I'm in negotiation at the moment, so I can't really speak to that here. But what I can say is there is appetite for people to share the petition from the opposition parties. As I say, I'll be able to speak more to the logistics in due course, but yeah, there is a strong appetite from Labor and the Greens to help out with this, as opposed to along with what they've already done with the GSS bill.
Because they're both, I understand, pledged to repeal the Disability Services Bill. Could you talk, Nick, about what would be involved if we change back to the 75%? I mean, how much money are we talking here if you're looking at it in a purely brutally financial sense, which the government seems to be doing?
Yeah, they are. If we go back to there's the immediate cost of the 236 million that the government is saving by going down to 65% of the subsidy. But you see, there's a whole nother component to this which hasn't been factored in because there wasn't the analysis done in terms of the cost benefit or the wider social impact analysis. And if government had done that analysis, then they would know that by shifting the subsidy down to 65%, what they're going to see is costs being deferred onto other budgets, like, for example, the health budget, the wider welfare budget, and they just don't know what those costs are. For example, I'll give you a really good example. Because people are not going to, we're going to be making choices about whether they go and visit their GP, that increases the likelihood that people will, members of the disability community will go to the emergency department as their first form of medical interaction. So they'll be coming in sicker and needing more advanced care in the healthcare system, which is more expensive, and that cost just gets transferred through to the health budget. And that's the type of analysis that would have been picked up if we did a social impact analysis. So this is actually a transfer of cost from the transport budget through to the healthcare budget.
Yeah, so essentially it's a false economy. Blake, could you talk about what sort of trips now are unlikely to be taken or can't be taken because of the lower subsidy?
So there was a number of other factors, but a good example is I had to pull out of the party congress that we had a few weeks ago due to timing and the cost. So that was unattainable. And if it wasn't for a kind gesture, I would have had to pull out of the DSS petition delivery, but I was able to do that because of a generous offer, so I was able to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Nick, you talked about people potentially missing doctor's appointments or being able to collect prescriptions, those sorts of things, which mean that people have to present unexpectedly and at a dangerous and difficult time to an emergency department. We've heard about the pressure that emergency departments are under. There was a case reported last week where a man waited for more than 8 hours at the Waikato hospital and unfortunately died in the toilets at the hospital, the emergency department. And another case that was reported this week of a mother of 5 who was told at the Palmerston North emergency department that she would not be seen for 25 hours, so she decided to drive to Hastings and unfortunately died in the car on the way to Hastings. Are we hearing about some of these cases? Because I'm guessing that the disability community probably has more than its fair share of times visiting emergency departments and medical appointments.
I think it's probably a little bit too early for those cases to start to surface, Bernard. But I think that is a very real possibility where people are starting to make choices about whether they go and pick up their prescription this week or they delay it for a week so that they can go and do their food shopping, or they can pay other important bills. And by delaying a medical appointment or picking up their prescriptions because their prescriptions cost them money now, they're going to be. We're in the middle of winter at the moment. People are getting sick, and that all of that compounds into unavoidable hospitalizations is what it's termed in the system. Avoidable hospitalizations, where people, if they would have had good access to primary care, then they can deal with situations that can be managed in a primary care. But for disabled community, it's a little bit too early to start to see those stories surfacing. But we can imagine that they will start to come.
Just finally, from me, Blake, you've got the petition out there, and I'll make sure I put a link into the petition in the show notes for when we put this video out to our subscribers. But when does it close off, and who will you be presenting it to?
So we're negotiating. I don't know if Nick got an update that he can share with me for the first time, but we're negotiating that at the moment. But it will be some form of tangi utikeri and somebody from the Greens yet to be determined. I don't know if Nick can speak to any more of that yet.
No, not yet. We're still negotiating but tangi utikeri will be one of the spokespeople to receive. So.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you very much to Blake Forbes and to Nick Ruane from the disability advocacy community, talking about total mobility. A reminder that this is the cut in the subsidy for total mobility from 75% to 65% starting on July the 1st. And the petition is being run through Action Station to get that subsidy returned to 75%. Hey, thank you very much. Great to see you all for coming on to a mini hoon. Ka kite anō.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you.